Troy Clifford is a paramedic based in Osoyoos, British Columbia, but he's in Vancouver this morning in his capacity as president of the Ambulance Paramedics of BC and the Emergency Dispatchers of BC. Troy Clifford, welcome to our program. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on, Heather.
I mean, it's an extraordinary thing we've been covering all this week. Temperatures now very close to 50 degrees. What are you seeing yourself, but also hearing from your paramedics, from your dispatchers? What are you seeing out there right now?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We're experiencing the same thing. I listened to the show and I've been talking to a lot of people over the last couple of days, and quite frankly, it's stretching our resources thin. Already staffed, we already have staffing and challenges in BC across the province. We represent paramedics in the community you talked about that are hitting heights. So they're dealing with calls on the streets and in the communities that are hitting those incredible numbers that we've never experienced in BC. So, coupled with our incredible call volumes that we've seen since opening up in BC and since this heat wave started Friday, we're seeing 25 to 50% more calls than we normally do in the province, and that's adding fatigue to the paramedics. But without the ambulances to send because of our shortages of staff to work, we're in a crisis with those shortages and the increased call volumes. It's I don't like to call it a perfect storm, but a perfect storm in a bad sense from a lot of it. But the paramedics, dispatchers I'm talking to, it's just the pressures to respond to all the calls for service, not just with the heat related, but with all the recreational stuff we're seeing in BC at the time we normally see in summer. And then the pressure just to be able to be resilient and look after yourself from call to call to call.
So you're seeing all sorts of different kinds of calls, but you mentioned the volume is up, as you said, by a large percentage. How much of it is related to the heat? What I guess I'm really saying is, what exactly are the calls that you're getting in such number right now? Yeah,
so when I talk to the paramedics and dispatchers and BC EHS, what we're experiencing is about 25% additional calls related to probably the opening up, the heat. It's correlating to the timelines are correlating to when we started seeing the real increases in weather and opening up in BC. So we're seeing more people out that have been shut in, obviously. This time of year, we see the traditional summer stuff in BC. We have a beautiful province, as most of your listeners know. But what happens is, combined with being out in the recreation, the boating in my community in the Okanagan Valley, we have a lot of visitors. You're showing pictures there of the air quality, those type of calls, the respiratory challenges we're seeing. But you talked about, and we've been talking about the shut-ins and the more vulnerable people that are living in conditions that may not be ideal. Looking at the downtown east side where we're seeing a lot of homeless people that can't get away from the elements. So those are all areas that are affecting our calls that we're seeing. The heat-related injuries, obviously, like heat exhaustion, but manifesting into heat stroke, which is a life-threatening emergency and needs immediate attention. So there are all those type of calls that we see, with the more cars on the road. We're seeing the rescues that we see on our beautiful mountains and recreational areas across BC.
So I'm understanding why you called it a perfect storm for all of these reasons, and why you said in Susanna's reporting that there are hours and hours of waits, consequently, for ambulances to be able to respond to all of these calls. But beyond that, I mean, there's the number that we got from the coroner service yesterday, 233 sudden deaths. They are linking, in some part at least, to this heat wave. I mean, is that anything that you've experienced before?
No, and obviously we deal with sudden deaths and cardiac arrests on a regular basis. That's unfortunately part of our business, and our profession. But to see those sorts of numbers that the coroner's talking about, and I've been talking to paramedics and dispatchers, and they noticed an unusual spike before we really heard the numbers of sudden deaths and cardiac arrests. We work with our partners in police and first responders, and to hear those numbers and see the impacts on the families is really one of the things that is really tough, and the people that have been experiencing those things. So it's really important that we really check in on the people that are vulnerable or can't look after themselves. But more importantly, that this stuff not only has impacts on our patients, but their families and their loved ones, but the toll on the paramedics and the responders and the dispatchers taking those calls is incredible. They're working in heat and under pressure with our staffing and challenges, and that's been tough. It's taken a toll on their mental well-being and their psychological health.
Let me ask you about that too, because in this conversation, and I know in other interviews that I've seen you quoted and listened to you've talked about the shortages and the problems, the lack of preparedness, you say, for this kind of a crisis situation. It's something that in your capacity as union president, you would have confronted. We're talking about how this, a lot of experts are saying, is linked to climate change and that it's only going to get warmer in the years to come. So I'm wondering, being in the thick of things right now, what does BC, what do other jurisdictions need to do to be ready for this to increase, for these kind of crisis situations to become more prevalent and going to have to be facing in the days and months and years to come? What do we need to do to get ready?
So in our business, we, sadly, preparation and capacity building and training is really the key thing. So we know that every summer, for example, we know every summer we're going to face forest fires across the country, but in BC particularly, when we're prepared for it, our forest management, if we end up with interface fires, we have protocols in place. I think that's where, these type of events, we have adversity. We've just dealt with a year and a half of significant adversity that we may not have been prepared for, but we adapted. So I think the ability to be transformed and adapted, be prepared, put in the safety measures, and have the resources in place to be prepared for these type of events are key things. And when we talk in the public safety and the emergency services, we talk about emergency management and preparation and planning and then the execution. So we have the resources and the training and the capacity to handle natural disasters or spikes like we're seeing right now in these things. And we're very adaptable that way. That's what we do every day. We don't know what's going to face us on a daily basis, and that's what we're proud of, and that's why people get into this profession. But long term, I think we have to adapt to these type of things. We're gonna see change in the world, and we need to be able to be better prepared and understand what the short and long-term implications of these things are, so that we can respond from a professional perspective, but also from a society perspective.
Troy Clifford, I appreciate your perspective in all of this, and good luck in confronting these days ahead, because the heat dome is still socked right on where it's got everything clamped down, and it looks like it's going to be pretty critical for the next couple of days. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and just ask everybody to be safe and look after each other.
Troy Clifford is a paramedic. He's in Vancouver today, but normally working out of Osoyoos, British Columbia.